You're listening to The Jacob Valk Show. He's breaking down the latest and greatest in sports as only he can. Follow him on Twitter at RealJacobValk. Here he is, Jacob Valk.
Hello, sports fans! Welcome to another edition of the Jacob Valk Show. I am Jacob Valk, and I have to start with the stupidity that is Rob Manfred and the contingent that he represents, the owners of the 30 MLB teams. They are thinking about proposing a schedule that has anywhere from 42 to 60 games, depending on what report you believe. If we end up with a 42-game season, or even a 60-game season, let's just cancel the season. Alright, it's not worth it. You cannot have Major League Baseball have a 42-game schedule, or 60, or 50. It doesn't matter! It was bad enough when we were going to have 82, but at least that could be accepted because the NHL and the NBA have 82-game schedules. 42 to 60? You've got to be joking! And you combine that with all the other stupidity that the owners are kicking around and the Players Association is kicking around to get these games off the ground in the first place. Let's just cancel the season. Please. Please, please, please. Enough with this. Let's just cancel the season and let's start fresh in 2021. If this is what we need to do to have baseball happen, 42 to 60 games, let's just cancel the season. Can you imagine what you're going to do to the record books? When we look back at this season 50 years later, whoever wins MVP, yeah, you did it in a 60-game schedule. I mean, it's bad enough that the NFL had that. In the strike-shortened season, they had a kicker win MVP, Mark Mosley. You're going to have some utility infielder win MVP. Can you imagine the World Series winner? Oh my gosh. Yeah, I had the best record through 60 games. Or 42 games. And I was able to pick on the weaker opponents. Oh, come on. You've got to be kidding me. 42 to 60 games. This is the best that the owners can come up with. 42 to 60 games. Oh, God. Man, I wish I had a time machine so I could tell Jacob from last week to never support the owners. This is outrageous. 42 to 60 games. I don't care how much money you're losing. You know what? The game comes first. The beauty of baseball comes first. And the fact that you're willing to have this asterisk of a 42-game season, I mean, it just proves that the owners don't care about baseball. They care about money. I understand they're businessmen and they need to make a profit. I get that. But they have a duty to the fans. Realize, without the fans, they don't make any money in the first place. And without the players, they don't make any money. No one wants this. No one wants a 42 to 60 game season. And there are rumors that Manfred has the authority to schedule however few games he wants unilaterally, if that is true, then the players need to draw a line in the sand and say, no, we are not going to be a part of this mockery. I mean, the 114-game schedule, I kind of like that. Yeah, we're having baseball late in the year, but hey, we're doing it for hockey and basketball. Why not do it for baseball? You know, the players are going to say that the risks of playing during this coronavirus climate isn't worth a 42 to 60 game season. And you know what? They'd be right. Can you imagine a player like Mike Trout who wins the World Series in a shortened season and that's it? He wins nothing else? He'd point to this World Series and say, hey, look, I have one World Series. People would fire back, yeah, but it was in a shortened season. You only had to go through 42 to 60 games. They'd be right. This World Series would have the biggest asterisk that any championship has ever had. I mean, you get the sense that the owners just don't want a season at this point. And you get the sense that the players don't either. I mean, the truth is both sides are at fault here. Both sides are at fault for putting money ahead of everything. I understand that the players have a limited shelf life and they need to make as much money as possible. I get that. I'm not begrudging the players for wanting money. What I'm begrudging them for is putting money ahead of the fans. Because at the end of the day, the fans come first. And the owners are that way too. The owners are putting their own checkbook in front of the fans. Penny smart, pound foolish. They're worried about making as much money as they can now, but they're not worrying about the future. If Major League Baseball cancels this season, which is beginning to look like a real possibility and may be the best option, they will never recover from it. Never. When they canceled the World Series in '94, how did they get back? By the home run. By turning a blind eye to steroids. Well, the novelty of the home run has worn off. You juiced the balls last year. We're done with home runs. What are you going to do to get fans back? You're going to have to give away tickets. You're going to have to shorten the games. How are you going to do that without making a mockery of it? 42 to 60 games. That's the best that these billionaires can do. These penny pinchers that are furloughing the salaries of minor leaguers that need the players to supplement it. How many stories have you seen of teams refusing to pay minor leaguers? And they're cutting a bunch of minor leaguers. Look, that doesn't bother me. They were probably going to be cut anyway. But these minor leaguers live paycheck to paycheck. They sign up for spending all summer on a bus, going from point A to point B, and they're usually in the middle of nowhere. They don't see their families. They make nothing. Most of them are never going to get a shot in Major League Baseball. For every Vlad Guerrero Jr., there's a Crash Davis. I don't know, Bull Durham. There's a Crash Davis that's going to spend his whole career basically in the minor leagues, as opposed to a hotshot prospect that's just going to spend a year or two there. Major League Baseball doesn't care about the minor leagues. Major League Baseball doesn't care about its players. Major League Baseball doesn't care about the fans. Rob Manfred has single-handedly run this sport into the ground. Bud Selig had his issues. He's a saint compared to Rob Manfred. I don't know who the best commissioner in Major League Baseball history is. If it's Kennesaw Mountain Landis, if it's Ford Frick, Happy Chandler, whoever you want. But Selig is Landis compared to Manfred. This is absurd. This is disgusting. We're really going to cancel the season because these owners want to make as much of a profit as they can based on this 1 year. Lose money this year. You'll make it back on the back end. You'll make it back in the future. Don't you understand that? Don't you understand that by doing your best to put a quality season on display this year, that the players will appreciate it and the fans will appreciate it, and they'd be more willing to cut you a break down the line? I mean, the fans will flock back. If you put your best foot forward, the fans will flock back. Maybe not the players, but the fans will. You know, it's funny. I said this to my father yesterday. Or maybe it wasn't yesterday. Maybe it was over the weekend. Could the owners say to the players, just accept these terms and we'll make it worth your while during the next CBA negotiations? And he said yes, but that's assuming that the players trust the owners. No one trusts the owners at this point. How can the fans trust the owners? I mean, how many full season ticket holders are there for any given team? You spend thousands of dollars on these tickets, and you just find out that they care about one thing and one thing only, their checkbook. They don't care about putting a good product out there. They don't care about you. That's not the promise you make when you buy a sports team. You should be willing to lose money to put a good product out there. Oh my God, you're losing money. I could just picture it now. The owners are going nuts hearing this. I understand that it's a business. The Yankees are a business just like Amazon. The Mets are a business just like Google. The Red Sox are a business just like Apple. And they need to make money. I understand that. But your number one loyalty needs to be to the fans. And you have alienated them through this garbage. This absolute, unadulterated garbage. Please, just cancel the season. It's better than a 42-game schedule. It's better than a 60-game schedule. Maybe, just maybe, the fans will come back for 2021. You better hope and pray they do, or else you're screwed. Forget about it. You're not making any money. Moving on now to the NBA, and this isn't about them returning to play. It's kind of interesting that hasn't been finalized yet. I mean, the NHL has finalized it. I don't know why the NBA hasn't. But whatever. The G League Select team that features the likes of Jalen Green and Isaiah Todd have themselves a coach. And it is Brian Shaw, the former coach of the Denver Nuggets. Phil Jackson's former Golden Boy. Look, I've said this before that I think the G League Select team is gonna upend the NCAA. I think that the NCAA will now have to compensate their players based on this, and I stand by that, but that's not why I'm talking about Shaw being hired. I understand that this is a new experiment. We've never done this before, and Brian Shaw used to be the sexiest head coaching candidate on the market. but he went to Denver and failed miserably. He didn't even make it out of his second season. There were stories that Nuggets players breaking the huddle would say 1, 2, 3, 6 weeks because they couldn't wait for the season to be over. They didn't want to play for Shaw. That's the thing with this. The head coach of this team had to be a player's coach. Brian Shaw is not that. I don't want to kill him too much because this is a new experiment. Maybe these players aren't going to be ready to go up against the G League teams. It won't matter who the coach is, whether it's a strict disciplinarian or a laid-back players coach. Maybe they just won't be ready. But I really thought they needed a players coach for this to work. You're enticing these players to come in and they're getting paid right away and they get to showcase their abilities in front of quadruple A or, in some cases, NBA level talent. And you're going to stick him with Brian Shaw, a guy who, when he was with the Nuggets, had a lot of problems. He failed miserably in Denver. Again, I don't want to kill him too much because this is a new venture. And I don't blame Shaw for taking this at all. This is a great opportunity for him. If Shaw can whip these guys into shape and guys like Jalen Green and Isaiah Todd go 1-2 in the 2021 draft, Shaw's getting another chance in the NBA. There were some rumors that David Fizdale and Sam Mitchell were also in the running for the head coaching job. Sam Mitchell at one point was viewed to be the front runner. Maybe they'll join as assistants. I think that could work. Again, I don't want to kill Shaw too much because I don't know how this team is going to do. This is a new venture. No one has ever done this before. You're taking players straight out of high school and you're putting them against NBA talent. This isn't like a LeBron James or a Kobe Bryant. All due respect to Jalen Green and Isaiah Todd, they're not at that level. Again, maybe it doesn't matter who the coach is. Maybe these guys are gonna bust going up against NBA or quadruple A talent. Or maybe they're gonna dominate the G League. That's very possible. Quite honestly, I think that's what's gonna happen. But they're gonna need a coach to push them that extra mile. Brian Shaw didn't do that in Denver. I don't know if he's going to be able to do that here. I'm not crazy about this hire. Moving on now to the Chargers bringing back Damian Square. And I think that's a really good move. Square is a solid rotational defensive tackle. He can start in a pinch and hold his own. According to Pro Football Focus, last year he had a 63 overall grade. He kind of hovers around that mid-60s to high 50s range. For the most part, 2018, he was really bad, played a lot, and you don't want him starting a lot. But he can start a game or two and hold his own. I like the idea of the Chargers bringing him back. I'm sure it wasn't for a lot of money. And the Chargers could have used the added depth at defensive tackle. Yes, they have Linval Joseph. Yes, they have Justin Jones. Yes, they have Jerry Tillery. But Jones and Tillery didn't play well last year. Justin Jones, I don't think, is long for this league. And Jerry Tillery had a garbage rookie year. It's too early to give up on him, but man, he's got to step it up big time. Good move by the Chargers in bringing him back. They really, really needed to bring Square back. I do have to talk about two really, really notable deaths in the sports world. The first one is Pat Dye, probably the second best coach in Auburn history behind Ralph Jordan. He started his head coaching career at East Carolina, and under Dye, ECU never finished with less than 7 wins. In 1978, they went 9-3, made the Independence Bowl against Louisiana Tech, and destroyed them 35-13. In 1980, Dye went to Wyoming, a team that only had one season with a winning record in the 1970s. Dye immediately whipped that team into shape. They went 6-5, and he helped lay the groundwork for Al Kincaid and eventually Paul Roach. Dye then interviewed for the head coaching job at Auburn. Now, if you don't know anything about Auburn, they only care about one thing, and one thing only: beating Alabama in the Iron Bowl. They can finish with one win all year, but if that one win is against Alabama, that's a successful season. Dye was asked by the search committee how long it would take him to beat the Crimson Tide. Dye answered, 60 minutes. He was offered a contract right then and there, and deservedly so. Auburn got off to a slow start under Dye. They went 5-6 his first year, but then in 82, they finished with a 9-3 record and ended up beating Boston College in the Tangerine Bowl, which later grew to become the Citrus Bowl. I gotta say, I like the name Citrus Bowl a lot better than Tangerine Bowl. I can't even tell you the last time I had a tangerine. I don't think I've ever had a tangerine. 1983 was Dye's best season. Bo Jackson made his first All-American team. Auburn finished 11-1. They were ranked as high as 3 in the AP poll, and went on to beat Michigan in the Sugar Bowl 9-7. Neither team could get their great running game going. Auburn with Jackson, Michigan with Rick Rogers. But Auburn's defense won the day. In 84, Auburn massively disappointed. They ended up finishing 9-4. They made the Liberty Bowl, and they did win it, but to end up in the Liberty Bowl after being the number 1 team, that's rough. But again, they did win 21-15 over Arkansas. Bo Jackson made his second All-America team. Greg Carr made his only All-America team, a great linebacker for Auburn. It was just a disappointing team. It was a good team, but it was a disappointing team. And the same thing with 85. Auburn was ranked second in the preseason AP poll. They were ranked as high as number 1, but they finished 8-4, and they ended up losing in the Cotton Bowl to Texas A&M 36-16. Not for nothing, though, Dye started his bowl career going 4-0. That's pretty good. I'll take that. If you start your college football career in bowl games going 4-0, you're doing something right. Bo Jackson made his last All-America team. He was picked first overall by the Buccaneers in the '86 draft, and everyone expected Auburn to fall off. But they didn't. Anchored by Brent Fullwood, a really, really good running back, Auburn went 10-2, and they ended up facing USC in the Citrus Bowl, beating them 16-7. In '87, Auburn went 9-1-1 en route to meeting Syracuse in the Sugar Bowl. They ended up tying the Orange 16-16. I don't like ties in bowl games, but it was a thing back then. Andre Bruce made an All-America team en route to being picked first overall in the '88 draft. Without Dye, Bruce does not go first overall. That was a stunner of a pick. Probably shouldn't have been the pick. Bruce had a solid career, not worthy of first overall. But without Dye, Bruce doesn't get picked first overall. And Tracy Rocker made his first All-America team, a great, great, great defensive lineman in college. In '88 and '89, Auburn finished with back-to-back 10-2 records. They lost the Sugar Bowl at the end of the '88 season to FSU 13-7. But then they rebounded to win the Hall of Fame Bowl at the end of the '89 season by beating OSU 31-14. The Hall of Fame Bowl is now known as the Outback Bowl. My mom's favorite bowl game because she can get either a free bloomin' onion or coconut shrimp, depending on who wins. 1990 was Dye's last great Auburn team, anchored by a great offensive line led by Ed King and a great defense anchored by David Rocker. Both of them were on the All-American team. The 1990 team finished 8-3-1 and beat Indiana 27-23 in the Peach Bowl. His career at Auburn ended really poorly. The NCAA found that Dye was personally responsible for rules violations. He had to step down as athletic director in '91 and as head coach the following year. Thank you, Wikipedia, for that. I didn't remember that. But that's not how we should remember Dye. We should remember Dye as the second best coach in Auburn history, behind Ralph Jordan. Pat Dye was one of the best college coaches throughout the mid-'70s into the 1980s. May he rest in peace. The last sports death that I want to talk about concerns a basketball Hall of Famer, Wes Unseld. And it's kind of funny. He had been a forgotten figure among NBA fans, but last year he got back into the spotlight because everyone was comparing Zion Williamson to Unseld. A smaller guy, they were both 6'7", really smart players, great passers, really strong. But Unseld was a much better rebounder than Zion. I don't think Zion will ever be the rebounder that Unseld was. He went to college at Louisville and dominated all throughout. 3-time first team All-Missouri Valley Conference. He led the conference in rebounding the 3 years he was there. 2-time All-American. Has his number retired by the Cardinals. He was insanely dominant. In 1968, he was drafted by the Baltimore Bullets. As you may know, they became the Washington Wizards later. But Unseld immediately dominated. He averaged 13.8 points in his rookie year and 18.2 rebounds. That is an insane stat line. I mean, that's Ben Wallace-like. The Bullets made the playoffs that year. Unseld finished with 18.8 points per game in the playoffs and 18.5 rebounds, but they were swept in the semifinals by the Knicks. He'd go on to face the Knicks in 5 straight playoffs, only beating them once, though, in 1971. But the battles that he had with Willis Reed were legendary. But I'm getting ahead of myself. In Unseld's rookie year, he won Rookie of the Year and MVP in the same season, becoming the second player in NBA history to do that, Wilt Chamberlain being the first. In his sophomore year, Unseld had his best scoring year, 16.2 points per game. His rebounds dipped a little bit at 16.7, but his assists went up, 3.5 assists per game. He was really the first great passing big man. And in the playoffs that year, Unseld dominated. 10.4 points per game, not that good, but 23.6 rebounds. That is insane. They would, however, fall to the Knicks in 7 games. Unseld kept up that type of play. His scoring did go down after his sophomore year. He averaged 14, 13, and then 12.5 in the next 3 years. But his rebounds stayed insane. 17 rebounds per game to 17.5 rebounds per game to 16 rebounds per game. And his assists per game never dipped below 3.7 in those 3 years. In the playoffs, what Unseld lacked in scoring, he more than made up for in rebounds. In those 3 years, he averaged 12.5 points per game, with 17 rebounds per game and 4 assists per game. In the 73-74 season, Unseld got hurt, and after that he had to reinvent his game, being less of a scorer and more of a rebounder. In 74-75, the first year of the Washington Bullets, Unseld averaged just 9 points a game, but he averaged 15 rebounds and 4 assists to go with 1.5 steals per game and a block a game. And with Elvin Hayes and Phil Chenier leading the way for the Bullets in scoring, they made the NBA Finals, only to be swept by the Warriors. That year, Unseld led the NBA in rebounding for the first and only time. That's absolutely insane to me that he only led the NBA in rebounding once. Those were the kinds of years that he would put together throughout the rest of his career. He wouldn't score a lot, but he would rebound the ball insanely well, would deliver insane fast break passes, would play great defense. Wes Unseld is one of the most underrated defenders of all time. But it seemed like the Bullets were never going to get over the hump with him until the 77-78 season rolled around. That team had well-rounded scoring with Hayes, Bob Dandridge, Mitch Kupchak, Kevin Grevy, Chenier, and Tom Henderson. Unseld and Hayes were fantastic rebounders. You did not out-rebound the Bullets that year. You just didn't. Henderson and Unseld were great distributors, and the Bullets won the NBA title in 7 games over the Supersonics. So far, their only NBA title. The year after that, they made it back to the NBA Finals. Chenier had been traded earlier that season, so Unseld had to step up his scoring a little bit. He went from averaging 7.6 points per game to 10.9 points per game. He kept his rebounding basically the same. His assists per game were the same. But the Bullets had to go to 7-game series against the Hawks in the semifinals and the Spurs in the conference finals. By then, they were exhausted against the Supersonics, a younger team, and the Sonics beat the Bullets in 5 games. Unseld spent a couple more years with the Bullets, but they wouldn't do anything in the playoffs. He retired after the 80-81 season. His number 41 was retired right after that. He later got into coaching the Bullets, but he was absolutely terrible. We don't talk about that. Unseld would go into the Basketball Hall of Fame in 1988, the College Basketball Hall of Fame in 2006. He won Finals MVP when the Bullets won the title. May he rest in peace. Tomorrow, I don't know what you're going to get. Maybe the trifecta, maybe not. I didn't expect all these stories to break in the past 24 hours, so hey, who knows? Until tomorrow, I am Jacob Valk saying that I knew I was in trouble when they started clocking my fastball with a sundial.